The first red flag wasn't the rearranged office or the missing nameplate. It was the coffee mug. Mine, white ceramic with a blue stripe, was always on the right corner of my desk. Handle turned precisely east. It had been moved, smudged. 2. Someone else had been here. I'd only been out for 8 business days. Outpatient surgery. Nothing serious. A clean break from the chaos. But the second I stepped back into the 12th floor of Alien Diagnostics Boston HQ, the air felt off. My badge beeped, but my inbox didn't load. A sticky note on my monitor read, "Email temporarily restricted during transition." Transition. I was the Director of Regulatory Affairs. There's no transition unless I'm the one authorizing it. Then I saw the org chart. My title, once directly under the COO, had been nudged 2 layers down, tucked neatly under Operations Efficiency. The new box read, Compliance Lead. Cute. That's when I heard the laugh. You must be Reagan. The voice was smooth, too loud, the kind that fills a room and waits for applause. I turned. There he was. Tan, tailored, overconfident. Chase Darden, our brand new CEO, fresh off a Series C turnaround with some wearable tech company in Palo Alto. No background in healthcare, no understanding of FDA protocols, just a track record for disruption and a LinkedIn following that called him a visionary. He extended a hand. I took it. "I've heard a lot about you," he said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We'll get along just fine. Just so you know, your title was always a joke anyway." I blinked once. "Excuse me, not your fault," he added, already turning toward his assistant. "Legacy companies like fluff. We'll trim that." I smiled. "Not the kind you mean, the kind you put on when someone calls your career irrelevant to your face. Reagan Hartley, 36. I've worked in regulatory compliance for 12 years. 4 of those with the federal government. I've seen enough executives fall on their own swords to know when someone's sharpening one behind your back. So I sat down, powered up the restricted laptop, and thought, fine, Chase, let's see who the real joke turns out to be. By the end of my second week back, something in the paperwork started to smell wrong. Our clinical validation reports normally buttoned up, time-stamped, and squeaky clean began showing hairline cracks, missing initials, incomplete test logs, a signature from a senior lab manager who'd been on medical leave the entire month. At first, I assumed it was just transition sloppiness. New leadership always brings some turbulence, but then it kept happening, so I flagged the errors. Nothing aggressive, just a quiet slack to product compliance, a few line edits in the margins. A calendar invite with notes attached. No fire alarms, just doing my job. Chase got wind of it fast. "You're looking a little too closely at things," he said one afternoon, leaning against my office door like we were old friends in on the same joke. "Compliance slows innovation. Reagan, we're not here to play hall monitor." He smiled like that was supposed to be charming. It wasn't. I kept my face still. "And we're not here to create liabilities that cost us FDA approval. Relax," he said, waving a hand. "You've got good instincts, but let's keep it light touch, big picture. Fast lane, fast lane." Sure, I didn't argue. But that night, I started a new folder on my own device. Folder WA1 Alien Compliance Deviations. I timestamped the first entry, 3 to our routine missing authentication log, Lab 7, trial ID, 00192 unauthorized signature, 7 days later. I arrived to find a thick envelope on my desk. No name, no logo. Inside a voucher for a $5,000 leadership reset retreat in Napa Valley. 4 nights, private suite. Spa included. Tucked beside it. "Appreciate you staying flexible." See, I sat there a long time, staring at the gold lettering on the gift card. The message was clear. Even without ink, stop asking questions. Enjoy the wine. I didn't shred it. I didn't report it either. I took a photo, logged it in folder Wo1, saved a copy to encrypted cloud backup. Then I slid the envelope back in the drawer, unopened. Some people take bribes in suitcases. Mine came in a monogrammed envelope. The boardroom was all glass and tension. Everyone sat straighter when investors were in the building. Even Chase traded his usual sneakers for Oxfords that day. Alien Series D round was weeks away, and the company's flagship diagnostics platform, AlienX, was the crown jewel. Chase stepped to the front like he was on a TED stage. Slides appeared, sleek designs, projected revenue, clinical efficacy rates. Then came the line that pulled the air straight out of my lungs. We've completed FDA trials ahead of schedule. Validation metrics are already on file. I blinked. When I checked the internal database on my tablet, no FDA trial submission, no clearance, no validation. We hadn't even begun the phase 2 clinical timeline. He wasn't just bending the truth. He'd snapped it in half and handed it to a room full of millionaires with champagne taste. Beside me, Angela Kim, our new director of investor relations, polished, sharp, and freshly poached from Moderna, nodded like every word was gospel. She didn't know, not her fault. She was sold the same lie. I stayed quiet through the meeting, took notes, cross-referenced every metric Chase rattled off. Then I went back to my office and pulled up the source documentation from QA and trial management systems. The signatures had been pasted into a scanned document slightly misaligned, different ink intensity, rookie-level forgery, but just clean enough for a boardroom pitch. At 4:17 p.m., I wrote the email, subject urgent false FDA claim, alien presentation to Chase Darden, CC none for now content per CFR Title 21, 312. 20 no trial submission or validation has been formally submitted or cleared for AlienX. The statement made in today's investor pitch is materially inaccurate and potentially exposes the company to regulatory investigation and investor fraud claims. Attached supporting logs, metadata, and QA validation records. Please advise immediately on next steps for correction prior to publication. I labeled it Email Warning Number 7 and saved a copy to folder 01. His response, silence. The kind that doesn't forget. I stared at my screen for a long time, not because I didn't know what would happen next, but because I did. The moment someone in my role lets something like this slide, it stops being an oversight. It becomes collusion. And I wasn't going to prison for Chase Darden's ego. I gave them every chance. The morning after the investor pitch, I sat across from Monica Graves, our VP of HR Pleasant. Polished. Always 5 minutes behind on everything, but somehow never frazzled. Her office smelled like vanilla hand lotion and low-stakes diplomacy. I brought printouts, sanitized redactions, time-stamped logs, forged signatures, highlighted in yellow. I explained, calmly, clearly, without dramatics. Her pen moved once or twice across her notepad, but mostly she just nodded, as if I were giving her a quarterly update on printer usage. Then she leaned back and said the line. I still hear sometimes when I'm walking alone in silence, Chase is turning us into a unicorn. Reagan, let's not get in the way. I waited for the follow-up, a wink, maybe, a grin that meant she was joking. Nothing came. She folded her hands and said, Look, if we start pulling every thread, the whole sweater unravels. We've got to pick our battles. This one involves federal law, I replied. She tilted her head. And we appreciate your diligence. We do. But sometimes the spirit of innovation moves faster than the letter of the rule book. Let it go. I didn't argue. I just thanked her, stood up, and headed for the executive floor. The CFO's office had an ocean view and the permanent smell of expensive cologne. Gary Harlow was a numbers guy, silver hair, cufflinks, and smug charm that came with a Harvard degree and a pension plan already secured. I laid it out, direct and factual. I even skipped the background and went straight to the forged FDA claims. He didn't flinch. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled like I'd just told him we were out of bottled water, and said, "He's a risk taker. We need that." I stared at him. "He's committing fraud." Gary shrugged. "Welcome to scaling. Nobody builds valuation by playing it safe. Reagan, you'll catch on." That was the moment it clicked. They already knew. Not just Chase, not just his inner circle, but they all knew, and they'd made their choice. So I made mine. I walked back to my office, closed the door, opened folder 01 and created a new subfolder, Leadership Awareness. I uploaded meeting notes, dated, time-stamped, verbatim quotes. They'd made silence a strategy. I'd make records mine. The next 4 weeks blurred into a pattern violation, documentation, silence. By the end of the month, I had logged 27 separate breaches, each one-time stamped, evidence-backed, tucked neatly into folder 01. The offenses ranged from sloppy to dangerous. Clinical data altered post-signature backdated vendor forms. Lab safety protocols marked complete on days the building had been closed due to snow. One shipment logged as cleared when it hadn't even arrived on site. Each time I flagged something, Chase would laugh like I'd just read the fine print on a box of cereal. In one ops meeting, he looked across the table and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Here comes Officer Hartley. Better not breathe wrong, she might file it." A few people chuckled. The rest avoided eye contact. And I just smiled like I'd heard it before because I didn't flinch. I never do when people try to shrink you down to a punchline. Instead, I adjusted. I stopped emailing Chase directly and started CCing mid-level directors, lab leads, even procurement. Just enough to create a visible thread. Nothing dramatic, just factual reports clean, cold, professional. The silence got louder. Not a single reply. Not even a thanks for catching. Just read receipts and digital ghosts. They weren't ignoring me because they didn't believe me. They were ignoring me because they did. That's what stung most, how quietly people agree to pretend nothing is wrong. Like if they don't reply, maybe it's not their responsibility. Maybe if I carry it alone, they won't have to. Still, each time, I logged the breach, archived the evidence, and moved on to the next. I was building a wall, quietly, brick by brick. One night, I called my mom from the hospital in Chicago, where she was recovering from a second stent procedure. She sounded tired, but sharp as ever. "I'm fine, baby," she said, her voice low but steady. "But let me ask you something. Yeah, why do you stay in a place that keeps trying to erase you?" I didn't answer right away. The hospital line clicked in the background, somewhere behind her. The TV was playing a rerun of Wheel of Fortune. "I'm not staying," I finally said. "I'm just recording." She didn't push. She never does. But her silence lingered longer than usual. I ended the call. Then I opened folder 101, renamed the archive, cumulative 27 entries, and I added one more note. None acknowledged. No corrective action taken. The audit notice hit on a Monday. Subject line, Federal Compliance Review, 18-month scope. No emojis, no exclamation marks, just black and white inevitability. The agency listed was one I knew well from my government days. They didn't ask questions unless they already suspected the answers. Chase wasted no time. By 10 a.m., he'd summoned every director and department lead to the 16th floor conference room. Glass walls, cold coffee. One too many motivational posters about disruption. He stood at the head of the table like a tech CEO at a product launch, not a man staring down a potential federal investigation. "All right, folks, He clapped. All fake energy. We've got some housekeeping to do before our government friends come knocking. He called it housekeeping. He clicked the monitor and pulled up a list of flagged documents, many of which I recognized from my own reports. This is just a matter of tightening things up. He said, inconsistencies, missed initials, sloppy dates, nothing criminal, just messy. He looked around the table, like we were all co-conspirators in a misunderstood startup. Then his eyes landed on me. Reagan, especially you. You've got the best handle on the details. Help us clean it up. I didn't look away. If the inconsistencies are real, they're not mine to fix. Silence, thick and immediate. Someone shifted in their chair. One of the junior ops managers glanced at the door. A few folks stopped pretending to check their phones. Chase smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're all on the same team here. I kept my voice even. Not when the fix is illegal. His jaw twitched. Just slightly. He opened his mouth like he was about to argue. But instead, he moved on to the next bullet point, the next lie. But something shifted. Not in him in the room. People were listening now, really listening. And not everyone looked convinced anymore. When the meeting ended, no one spoke to me directly, but no one laughed either. Back at my desk, I opened folder 01, added a new entry 328, directive to alter records ahead of federal audit verbal, documented via meeting transcript. I CC'd myself, backed it up twice, printed a hard copy for offsite. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It wasn't sloppiness. It was intent. And I had just witnessed it in a glass box filled with silence. I didn't sleep the night before, not because I was anxious, but because I was methodical. I reviewed every entry in folder 01, line by line, each breach cross-checked against federal code, each supporting document re-scanned, verified, watermarked. I had become my own auditor, my own legal team, my own firewall. By 7:42 a.m., I was ready. Subject final compliance summary. Federal risk exposure to Chase Darden CC none. Not this time. Attached is the compiled list of 42 documented compliance breaches. Each includes relevant CFR citation, original document or falsified version with metadata, associated risk level, estimated penalty or federal liability, notable highlights, 3 clinical fraud incidents with potential fines exceeding $250,000, 2 forged FDA validation records, 5 falsified training certifications, as required under 21 CFR WARO 820 teams. 180, this constitutes a formal compliance report. No further action will be taken internally. Records have been archived. I hit send. Then I renamed the folder, ready for release 2 encrypted copies, 1 offline, 1 on cloud. 7 minutes later, my inbox pinged. From Chase Darden. Subject, re-final compliance summary. Body relax. This isn't life or death. That was it. No denial, no threat. Just a single emoji like all this was a game. And I was the uptight referee ruining his fun. I stared at the screen, not in shock, but in something colder. Not anger, not even disappointment. Recognition. He didn't understand what he'd done. Not really. Because when you've never carried liability, you forget how heavy it is. You throw words like relax into federal airspace and assume nothing will land. He thought this was still a negotiation, a branding problem, something to spin, then bury under a press release and a bonus cycle. But it wasn't. This wasn't documentation anymore. It was evidence. And Chase had just laughed at his own indictment. They arrived at exactly 11:02 a.m. 2 men in dark suits, close-cropped hair, and the kind of posture that doesn't bend unless protocol says so. No lanyards, no pleasantries, just the glint of badges and an aura that didn't belong to sales, marketing, or anyone who's ever said, "Let's circle back." They didn't stop at reception, didn't ask for a visitor pass. They walked with purpose, straight through the open workspace and down the hall toward the executive wing. I didn't have to guess why they were here. I just watched the ripple. Phones paused mid-scroll. Fingers froze above keyboards. Conversations drifted into whispers. Someone behind me asked, too softly, "Who are they?" I didn't answer. At 11:17, they entered Chase's office. The door didn't slam. It clicked calm. Professional. Absolute. I couldn't see inside, but I didn't need to. I imagined them flipping the folder open my folder page after page of evidence, time-stamped and silent, every forged signature, every backdated log, every warning I sent, ignored. He probably tried to charm them. He always did. Probably flashed that same smirk he wore the day he called my title a joke. But charm doesn't land when you're up against criminal exposure and a federal badge. At 11:46, the door opened. Chase stepped out between the agents. No cuffs behind the back front cuffed, a subtle courtesy. His suit jacket hung loose, like the wind had gone out of him. His skin had the sheen of someone who'd been sweating through a story that stopped working. He didn't speak. Neither did they. The room went still. No gasps. No outbursts. Just a slow, collective inhale from desks and corners and corridors. People who had chuckled at the nickname Officer Hartley now kept their eyes low, their mouths shut. I didn't move. Didn't gloat. I watched him walk, the same hallway he used to strut through like he owned the oxygen. Now, every step landed heavier than the last. Shame has a weight all its own. A few whispers started near the kitchen. Is that what did he do? Wait, is this about the trial data by the time the elevator dinged? No one was pretending to work. Everyone was pretending they hadn't seen it coming. Chase never looked back. The agents stood on either side. The doors slid shut. Silence. I turned back to my screen. One unread message blinked standard ops update. Nothing urgent. I opened it anyway, just to have something normal in front of me. Across the floor, people murmured. A few looked in my direction, but no one said my name. They didn't need to. At 12:03 p.m., the all-staff email went out. Subject Emergency Town Hall, 12:30 p.m. Attendance mandatory. No explanation. No signature. Just panic dressed up as procedure. I didn't attend. I was upstairs in the small print room by Legal, the one with the flickering light and the ancient black and white printer no one bothered to fix. I opened a blank Word document. No company header, no legalese, just 2 paragraphs, clean and final. To whom it may concern. After 4 years of dedicated service to Elian Diagnostics, I am submitting my resignation, effective immediately. I'm deeply proud of the work I contributed, particularly the years before current executive leadership. Thank you for the opportunity to serve with integrity. Reagan Hartley. I hit print. The paper slid out slow and steady, like even the machine knew this moment needed time to breathe. Back at my desk, the air had shifted, not heavy, just cautious. People were typing again, but it felt performative, like background noise in a scene no one wanted to star in. No one said a word to me, but a few glanced over when they thought I wasn't looking. That was fine. I slid the printed letter into a plain manila envelope and walked it to HR. I left it on Monica's desk, face up, no note, back at my desk. I packed slowly, one ceramic mug with a faint chip on the rim, a photo of my parents at Navy Pier, wind in their hair, both of them smiling like the world had never tried to knock them sideways. A small succulent in a chipped Navy pot, somehow still alive despite 3 building-wide heating failures and a drafty corner. I left the monogrammed Napa Valley voucher in the drawer, unopened. Let someone else try to cash in silence. I shut down my computer, logged off everything, took one last glance around, then I walked out, outside. The air was crisp. Boston spring, the kind that tricks you with sun and slaps you with wind. I stood by the curb and called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, baby," she said. "You okay?" I exhaled. "I'm good," I said. "I'm done." A pause on the line. Then her voice softened. "I knew you'd choose truth, just like your dad would have." That landed, quiet, steady. Like a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying slid off my shoulders. I booked a flight to Chicago for that evening. One way, no fanfare, just forward motion. At the airport, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt light. The truth had walked itself to the right door. All I did was hold it open.